The galaxy was burning. Stars lit up not with light, but with fire from battles. Worlds once full of life now floated in silence, their surfaces turned to ash. The Zarn Dominion, a ruthless alien empire, spread across systems like a shadow. Their armies were endless. Their ships moved like dark clouds, and their rule brought only fear. Every race that stood against them had been crushed. Every world that dared resist was turned into a graveyard. And now they were heading for a small human colony, New Terra. New Terra was not important. It had no weapons, no armies, and no great riches. It was a farming world, peaceful and far from Earth. But that peace shattered when the Zarn fleet arrived. Black ships with red engines entered the sky, blocking out the sun. Their presence alone made the air feel heavier. People looked up in fear, their hearts pounding. The silence before the storm was worse than the storm itself. The colony's leaders acted fast. They sent out a distress signal to Earth and the rest of the human alliance. A simple message: "We are under attack. Please respond. We need help." They waited and waited, but no answer came. Earth was far, and the Zarn were close. Panic began to spread. People packed bags, others hid underground, and many simply froze, unable to believe this was the end. The Zarn commander sent his message. It was cold and without mercy. His image, tall and armored in black and gold, appeared on every screen in the colony. "Humans of New Terra," he said, his voice deep and sharp, "your time is over. Submit and become slaves, or resist and be destroyed. You have until dawn." Then the message ended. There was no room for negotiation. The enemy believed they had already won. The night was long. Families stayed close. Children cried quietly. The local militia, barely trained, stood guard with old rifles and unsure hands. The sky was filled with Zarn ships, glowing red and silent like watching predators. The people of New Terra whispered to each other, hoping Earth had heard them, praying someone would come. But as the hours passed, hope faded. They believed they had been forgotten, that New Terra would be another name added to the long list of destroyed worlds. Then, just before the break of dawn, the sky changed. At first it was just a distant rumble, like thunder, but steady and deep. Then lights appeared, fast, sharp, and blue. Not Zarn red, different. The Zarn fleet moved, reacting for the first time. Alarms echoed from their ships. The people of New Terra ran outside, shielding their eyes as the sky lit up. Strange dark shapes were falling. No, descending. Hundreds of them. Big armored drop pods streaked through the sky like comets landing across the fields and hills outside the colony. The ground shook. Dust rose in clouds. Silence followed for a moment. Then the pods opened. Out stepped figures in dark armor, tall and broad, with glowing eyes behind their helmets. Their movements were calm and powerful, like they had done this 1,000 times before. Each one held a weapon that looked like thunder made solid. They said nothing at first, only scanned the area, then began to move with military precision. The colonists were frozen, unsure. Were these Zarn weapons? Some new horror. But then a voice came through every speaker, clear and steady. "This is Commander Harlan of the Earth Defense Shadows. You called for help. We came." The relief was like a wave. People cried, cheered, hugged strangers. But the soldiers didn't stop. They were already setting up defensive lines, scanning enemy positions, locking onto Zarn signals. Their leader, Harlan, looked at the sky, his eyes hidden but his voice heavy with fire. "Let's show them," he said, "what happens when you threaten Earth's people." The first shots were fired moments later. Zarn fighters flew in, trying to attack the landing zones. But the human soldiers were ready. Their weapons glowed blue and struck like lightning. One by one, the alien ships fell. On the ground, human squads moved like ghosts, cutting through Zarn patrols with brutal speed. The enemy didn't understand. This wasn't just an army. This was something else. These were Earth's lost warriors, the ones trained in secret, forged in past wars, and kept hidden until now. They were not soldiers. They were reapers in armor. In the distance, the Zarn commander watched the battle turn. His perfect plan, his easy victory, now slipping from his claws. He slammed his fist into the control panel and gave the order to bring down the full fleet. "Burn the colony to the ground," he screamed. "Crush them." But it was already too late. Earth had arrived, and with it came fury. The people of New Terra, once certain of defeat, now watched as the impossible happened. The sky, once filled with death, now held hope. And the war was no longer about surrender. It was about survival. It was about revenge. It was about reminding the galaxy what it meant to face humanity. The sun rose over New Terra, but it didn't bring peace. Smoke filled the sky. The air was thick with tension. On one side of the colony, the Earth defense shadows moved like a storm, silent, quick, and deadly. On the other side, the Zarn Dominion was gathering its forces, angry that their easy victory had slipped away. Commander Harlan stood at the edge of the colony, staring into the distance through the cracked visor of his helmet. His team had secured the main settlement, but the fight was just beginning. He knew the Zarn would not retreat. Not after being embarrassed. Not after losing their air units to a few dozen human soldiers. Inside the Earth mobile base, a large armored vehicle buried into the dirt. Specialist Zara was scanning enemy movements. Her screen blinked red again and again. "Commander," she said, "they're moving in fast. At least 2,000 troops, heavy armor, multiple airships." Harlan nodded. "Let them come. We're not leaving." The colonists were still in shock. They watched from windows and rooftops as these elite soldiers prepared for war. They had only seen such warriors in history books or old news footage. Rumors spread. Some said these fighters had once fought on Mars. Others whispered they were part machine, born for war and bred in secret Earth bunkers. One child pointed at a tall soldier loading a cannon. "Is that a robot?" he asked. "No," his mother whispered. "That's a human. That's what we are when we fight." As the Zarn moved closer, the Earth defense shadows deployed traps, energy shields, and gun towers. This wasn't just defense. It was a trap. They were letting the enemy come in, to destroy them from within, and come the Zarn did. The ground shook as heavy walkers approached. In the air, massive alien ships covered the colony in shadow. The Zarn commander, furious and proud, led the charge himself. His armor was darker than night, his weapons glowing with deadly power. "Burn this world," he ordered. "Leave nothing behind." Then the sky exploded. Missiles launched from hidden pods under the ground. Railguns buried by Earth's forces during the night lit up with blue fire. The first wave of Zarn soldiers was torn apart before they reached the colony walls. Explosions rocked the hills. The Earth soldiers held their lines like steel. The Zarn tried to push through, but they had never faced warriors like this. Captain Rios, one of Harlan's best soldiers, moved through the battlefield like a ghost. His armor shimmered, blending into the dust and fire. He took down entire squads alone, using blades of energy in short bursts from his silent rifle. Behind him, his unit followed, calm and brutal. A Zarn commander tried to rally his troops, but his voice was cut short by a sniper round through his skull. Above the colony, human ships finally arrived. Not many, just 3, but they were fast, deadly, and filled with more soldiers. Drop pods fell again, shaking the ground. The fight was no longer defense. It was full retaliation. Inside the colony, the people cheered. They didn't understand military plans or tactics. But they saw something they hadn't seen in days: hope. One old man, a former soldier himself, stood up straight for the first time in years. "They came," he whispered. "Earth didn't forget us." Commander Harlan gave new orders. "Break their lines. Hit them hard. Leave one alive to crawl back and tell them, 'We're coming.'" And the shadows did just that. They broke the Zarn front with a precision strike. They used their tech, their strength, and their fury. They fought not for glory, not for medals, but for survival, for revenge, for every planet the Zarn had destroyed, for every cry that went unanswered. Soon, the Tsarn realized they were losing. Their soldiers began to fall back. Their airships pulled away. The great commander who once promised victory was now fleeing, his voice trembling as he shouted for retreat. But Harlan wasn't done. He climbed into an Earth assault ship and pointed at the retreating enemy fleet. "Let's send them a message." The sky turned blue as human missiles launched. The largest Tsarn warship was struck, its engines bursting into fire. It crashed into the sea beyond New Terra, shaking the Earth itself. Silence followed. The battle was over. Smoke and ash still filled the air, but it was human soldiers who now walked the field. The Tsarn were gone, for now. Harlan removed his helmet. His face was scarred, tired, but calm. "They'll be back," Zara said softly beside him. "I know," he replied. "But so will we." And far above, in the dark cold of space, other Tsarn commanders watched the defeat. Furious, confused. How had such a small colony turned the tide? Then they heard the human message, broadcast across the stars. "This is Earth. If you come for us, we come for you." To be continued. The war was no longer hidden in shadows. It was loud, burning, and seen by every eye in the galaxy. The Tsarn Dominion had lost 3 battles. Not just lost, they had been humiliated. Their fleets shattered. Their commanders dead. Their pride broken. And worst of all, the humans were not done. On Earth, news spread fast. For the first time in years, humanity's eyes turned to the stars, not with fear, but with fire. The ancient soldiers who once fought in Earth's old wars stood tall again. Young people volunteered by the millions. Factories roared to life. Warships were built faster than ever before. The president of Earth stood before a silent crowd and said just 6 words: "We are not prey, not anymore." Meanwhile, the Tsarn were falling into chaos. On the war moon Threxal Prime, High Commander, Vezek faced the Tsarn Council. They were furious. One by one, the alien lords demanded answers. How did the humans win again? Where were our scouts? Our fleets? You promised victory, Vezek. Vezek, burned and scarred from the last failed battle, bared his teeth. You blame me? They are not what we thought. They fight like nothing we've seen. We send fire, they send storms. We take their homes, they take our worlds. One counselor, older and colder than the rest, whispered something that froze the entire room. Then perhaps we should leave the humans alone. Gasps, growls, but no one disagreed. Still, Vezek refused to accept defeat. No, one last chance. We strike where they are weakest, not their colonies, not their soldiers, their home. The council fell silent. You want to invade Earth? One asked. Vezek nodded. We won't get another chance. Back in deep space, Commander Harlan sat inside the EFS Retribution, Earth's newest battleship. It had just arrived near the front lines. The view from its observation deck showed hundreds of ships moving together, Earth's first war fleet in nearly 100 years. Zara walked in quietly. We intercepted something. What is it? Harlan asked. She placed a datapad in front of him. Tsarn transmission, encrypted. Took us hours to crack. It's a fleet order and coordinates. He read the data. His face hardened. They're going to Earth! Captain Rios slammed his fist into the wall. That's suicide, even for them. Not if they hit fast, Harlan replied. If they bypass our colonies, jump through the Helix Rift, they could reach Earth's orbit in days. Zara said what no one wanted to hear. Earth isn't ready. The Hellborn division was still deployed. Shadows were scattered. The war fleet was new. The planet's shields and orbital cannons were not fully activated, and the Tsarn knew it. Harlan stood slowly. Then we don't wait for them. We meet them first. A fast response squad was formed, a mix of elite Earth forces, Hellborn veterans, and shadow operatives. They would jump into the rift, intercept the Tsarn fleet, and buy Earth time to prepare. It was madness, a suicide mission, but that was exactly why it would work. 2 days later, deep within the unstable space of the Helix Rift, the human strike force waited in silence. Zara sat at her console, tracking signals. They're close. 1 minute out. Rios checked his weapon. We hit hard, hit fast. Get in their heads before they even reach Earth. Harlan watched the empty void. We don't need to win. We just need to hurt them so bad they forget how to fly. Then, without warning, the Zarn fleet appeared. Dozens of ships tore through the rift, their engines screaming, energy cannons charged, bioships howled, and Earth's force attacked. The rift lit up with fire. Missiles flew. Railguns slammed into alien hulls. Stealth drones exploded across engines and shields. The battle wasn't clean. It was brutal, messy, vicious, but it worked. One Zarn destroyer lost control and crashed into another. 2 bioships collided in the chaos. A command cruiser was hacked mid-flight and crashed into a rift storm, vanishing. In a black hole of light, inside the Zarn flagship, Vezik howled in fury. They were waiting for us. His second-in-command shouted, "They were ready! In the rift!" Vezik snarled, "Fall back! Fall!" But his command was never finished. A human stealth fighter fired one clean shot, right through the bridge. The flagship exploded. With Vezik dead, the rest of the Zarn fleet began to scatter. Some fled, others were destroyed. In less than an hour, what was once the greatest threat to Earth had been reduced to metal and smoke. Harlan's voice echoed through the comms. Earth is safe. But even as the soldiers cheered, even as victory tasted sweet, he knew this wasn't the end. This is just the beginning. Across the galaxy, the enemies of humanity watched in silence. Some were afraid, others were curious, because now they knew a truth that could not be denied. When humans go to war, they don't just fight, they bring hell with them. The galaxy was bleeding, and Earth was rising. After the Helix Rift battle, the Zarn Dominion was in ruins, their fleets broken, their high commander dead. The Zarn Council scattered. No more threats, no more ambushes, but Earth didn't celebrate, because deep down, humanity understood one thing: the war was not over. In a secure bunker below Earth's surface, the top military leaders met. Holograms flickered with images of battlefields, colony maps, and alien signals. Commander Harlan stood at the center, still bruised from the rift fight. "We've pushed them back," he said, "but we haven't broken them." General Miles, head of Earth Defense, nodded slowly. "And if we wait, they'll return." The decision was made. Earth would go on the offensive. The first target, Zarn core space, the heart of their empire, where their factories, leaders, and secrets lived. The mission was dangerous. No one had ever invaded it before. But that was the point. Earth would show the galaxy what happened when you threatened humans. The Strike Fleet Vengeance was formed. 5 capital ships, 10 fast attack cruisers, hundreds of drop pods and stealth fighters. At its heart, the 73rd Hellborn Division, the Elite Shadows, and Commander Harlan himself. Before launch, the President gave one final order: make them remember us, forever. The journey to Zarn core space took 6 days through uncharted warp routes. The tension inside the ships was thick. Soldiers checked their weapons in silence. No jokes, no games. Just focus. Captain Rios stood beside Harlan in the war room, staring at the star map. "You think we'll survive this?" Rios asked quietly. Harlan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Survival wasn't the mission. Victory was. As they exited warp near the Zarn homeworld, alarms screamed. The enemy was waiting. Dozens of Zarn ships circled their capital planet like vultures. Towers of fire rose from its surface. Defensive cannons, shield pylons, orbital mines. Zara gasped. "It's a fortress." Rios cracked his knuckles. "Then let's break it." The battle began. Earth's fleet struck hard. Fast strikes to enemy engines. Silent missiles slicing through space. Zarn ships fired back with plasma waves and living torpedoes. One Earth cruiser took a direct hit and exploded, debris spinning into the black. But the rest pushed forward, creating a gap just wide enough. Harlan gave the order. "Launch the drop pods, get our boots on the ground." Hundreds of pods screamed through the atmosphere. Some burned, some were hit, but many made it. When they landed, the ground shook. The Hellborn emerged first, armor glowing, weapons hot. The shadows followed, slipping through smoke and fire like ghosts. The Zarn were there in full force, creatures with spiked limbs, acid breath, and razor-tipped tails. But humans didn't fall back. They moved forward, block by block, bunker by bunker. Earth's soldiers advanced. Each step was earned with blood. Explosions lit up the sky. Screams echoed through the broken cities. At one point, a Zarn war beast, a towering creature with 6 legs and armor like steel, charged a human squad. The Hellborn didn't run. They jumped onto its back and tore it apart from the inside. Zara, now embedded with a field unit, hacked a shield gate blocking the main Zarn command tower. Rios led the charge inside. Lasers burned. Grenades flew. One soldier tackled a Zarn commander through a window. Finally, Harlan himself entered the throne chamber of the Zarn. Inside was the last of their high leadership. Old, cold, afraid. "You don't have to do this," one of them hissed. "We can offer peace." Harlan raised his weapon. "You had peace. You burned it." And then he pulled the trigger. The war was over. Earth had done the impossible. They had taken the Zarns home, crushed their armies, shattered their pride. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. No one cheered, no one laughed. There was only one feeling: fear, not of destruction, but of human will. How did a once fractured species rise to this level? How did they stand against monsters and win? Across the stars, other alien empires began to meet in secret. They whispered of alliances, of countermeasures, of containment. Because if Earth could defeat the Zarn, what else were they capable of? Back on the capital ship, as fire still burned on the surface below, Rios stood beside Harlan. "We did it." Harlan didn't smile. He just watched the stars. "Not yet." Zara joined them, her eyes scanning a new signal. "You might want to see this," she said. She pressed a button. A new image appeared, a strange fleet approaching, unknown designs, silent signals. Not Zarn, not human, something else, something new. The fires of war still burned on the Zarn homeworld. Smoke rose from shattered towers. Alien bodies and scorched metal littered the battlefield. But up above, in the black silence of space, a new shadow had appeared. Commander Harlan stood on the bridge of the EFS Retribution, watching the strange fleet inch closer. Ships of unknown shape, silent, cold, no communication, no flags, just watching. Captain Rios muttered, "They're not Zarn." Zara zoomed in on the largest vessel. "Look at the hull. It's made of stone." "Stone," Rios frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "No," Zara said softly. "It doesn't." Then the signal came. One transmission, one voice, cold, flat, not a warning, not a threat, just 4 words. "We see you now." The bridge went quiet. "What does that mean?" a young officer whispered. No one answered. Back on Earth, emergency channels lit up. Military advisors from every colony called in. All wanted answers. Who were they? What did they want? And most of all, were they worse than the Zarn? Zara worked, day and night, decoding fragments from the transmission. Data was hidden in the voice, buried deep in sound frequencies. It spoke of an ancient force, one that watched from beyond normal space, observers, judges, waiting for signs of rising species. "They call themselves the Orali Voss," Zara said. "They don't conquer, they erase." General Miles leaned forward. "Erase?" She nodded. "They believe in unbalancing threats, species that grow too fast, win too hard, those who should not exist." Harlan understood immediately. "They're here because we beat the Zarn." Zara's voice dropped. "Yes." Silence fell again. Earth had survived the Zarn, yes. But in doing so, it had drawn the attention of something older, something worse. The kind of enemy that didn't invade with armies. They judged, and when they judged a species dangerous, they removed it from history, without war, without warning. Rios stared at the fleet on the screen. How do we fight that? Harlan didn't answer. He turned to Zara. Do they speak to anyone? No, she replied. They just watch and wait, and then Earth disappeared. Not physically, but from galactic systems, maps, star charts, beacons. One by one, alien races stopped responding to human messages. Earth ships were denied entry at ports, trade routes were blocked, colonies were quarantined. DCC was like the galaxy was trying to forget humans ever existed. It was the Orali-Voss verdict: erase without war. Erase through silence, through fear. But Earth didn't kneel. It never had. And it wouldn't start now. The president gave a global broadcast. We will not fade quietly. If they try to erase us, we will write our names into the stars with fire. A secret project began, codenamed Echo Flame. Earth's best minds, soldiers, hackers, spies, and AI minds joined forces, not to attack the Orali-Voss, but to find a weakness, something hidden, a crack in their judgment. After months of silence, a breakthrough came. Zara found a hidden code inside the Orali-Voss network, buried deep. Not just numbers, but memories, images of lost species, voices, fears. They've done this before, she whispered, many times. But then something strange. Among the data fragments, a human voice appeared. A child, crying, lost. It was from Earth, a century ago. How? Rios asked, shocked. Zara shook her head. I don't know, but it means one thing. Harlan finished the sentence. They've been watching us for a long time. With this discovery, Earth changed the plan. They wouldn't beg. They wouldn't run. They would do what humans always did when pushed against the wall. They would speak back. The Echo Flame was used to hijack the Orali-Voss signal. For 10 seconds across the galaxy, every Orali-Voss sensor, ship, and probe saw one message, broadcast by Earth. You watched us rise. Now watch us survive. It was not a threat, not a plea. It was defiance. And in that moment, the Orali-Voss stopped moving. Their ships paused. Then, slowly, they vanished. Not destroyed, not fleeing, just gone. Harlan stood on the bridge, unsure. What had just happened? Zara stared at her console. They're not blocking us anymore. Why? Rios asked. No one had the answer. Maybe the Orali-Voss had changed their minds. Maybe they saw something in humanity that didn't fit their cold logic. Maybe they were simply curious now. Whatever the reason, Earth remained. The colonies came back online. Trade resumed. Signals returned. Slowly, the galaxy accepted humanity. Once more, but with a new kind of respect and a deeper kind of fear. Because now they knew. Humans don't just survive war. They survive judgment. And if you try to erase them, they'll burn your memory first. The flames had barely cooled on New Terra when the stars themselves began to whisper of the humans. Across the galaxy, word spread like fire. The Zarn Dominion, undefeated for over a century, had been forced to retreat, not by a great empire, not by alien warlords, but by humans. One colony, a handful of elite soldiers, and fury that could burn worlds. On the Zarn capital ship Gralketh, High Commander Vezek stood in silence. His claws tapped against the arm of his throne as reports came in. He listened to the same story again and again. Human soldiers arrived. Black armor, energy weapons, silent and fast. They did not just defend. They hunted us. He stared at the hologram of New Terra, now marked red on his star map. Red for failure. This cannot be. He growled. They are just humans. Lower officer dared to speak. They are not normal humans, Commander. These were different. Vezek turned slowly. Then we crush them differently. He gave the order. Full invasion. Not of New Terra, it was already lost, but of the next human colony nearby. We will strike before they can dig in. No mercy. No survivors. Let them see the price of resistance. Back on New Terra, Commander Harlan was preparing for just that. Inside the mobile Earth base, repairs were underway. Soldiers patched armor, charged weapons, and scanned the skies. They knew this peace wouldn't last. The shadows were never meant to hold ground. They were hit and run, special forces. But Harlan had a feeling they weren't going anywhere soon. Specialist Zara sat at her console, eyes locked on incoming data. "They're coming," she said flatly. "How many?" Harlan asked. She turned to him slowly. "Too many." He nodded. "Once. Then we give them a reason to regret it." The colonists helped where they could. Farmers dug trenches. Engineers wired makeshift barriers using scrap from downed Zarn ships. Children delivered supplies. Old veterans cleaned rifles they hadn't touched in years. New Terra was no longer just a colony. It was a symbol, a message. In orbit above them, more human ships began to arrive. Not many. Earth still didn't want to draw too much attention, but enough to reinforce the shadows. Captain Rios returned from a scouting mission. His armor was scorched and his eyes hard. "They're already landing troops on Ares 5, he reported. "That's the next colony in line." "Ares 5 has no defense," Zara added quietly. Harlan looked out the window at the sky. "Then we bring the war to them." Within hours, the shadows launched again, this time toward Ares 5. Drop pods filled the air like a meteor shower. The journey through space was short. The danger was not. The Zarn were ready this time. As the human pods entered Ares 5's atmosphere, enemy ships closed in. Explosions shook the sky. One pod was hit directly, vanishing in a burst of light. Another spun out of control, crashing miles off target. Inside the remaining pods, the soldiers stayed silent, hands steady, hearts calm. Commander Harlan's voice came through every helmet. "You know why we're here. You know what's at stake. Don't give them a single step." The pods slammed into the ground, opening in unison. Out poured fury. The battle for Ares 5 had begun. The colony there was worse than New Terra. Half evacuated, in ruins. The Zarn were already inside, hunting civilians. Fires burned through homes. Screams echoed in the wind, but that changed quickly. Rios led the first strike, cutting through a Zarn patrol like a knife through cloth. His team rescued trapped families and pushed the enemy back street by street. Every building became a stronghold. Every corner a trap. The Zarn were confused. These weren't armies, these were ghosts, machines, demons. One Zarn soldier, barely alive, crawled behind cover, whispering into his comms. "They don't fear death. They bring it with them." In the center of the city, Commander Harlan stood tall on a collapsed tower, giving orders as bullets flew and ships screamed overhead. "This is not a fight for survival," he said. "This is a fight for every world they think they can take. Show them who we are." Ares 5 became a graveyard for Zarn pride. One by one, their commanders fell. Their walkers were sabotaged. Their ships were hacked mid-flight and turned against them. By nightfall, the planet was under human control. But the cost was high. Captain Rios stood beside a burning wreck, dragging out injured civilians. Blood covered his armor. His voice cracked as he spoke. "We held them, but they'll be back." Harlan looked up at the stars again. "Let them come." As human rescue ships arrived and colonists cheered, a dark message began to spread across the galaxy. Earth is no longer silent. Earth is no longer weak. Earth is coming. The stars were no longer quiet. Something had changed. In every corner of the galaxy, warlords, empires, and alien commanders whispered the same word: humans. The species once ignored, once mocked, now feared. 2 colonies had been saved. 2 battles that should have been lost had turned into brutal victories. The Zarn Dominion, long feared for its destruction, had tasted defeat. Twice. But they were not done. Not yet. On the Zarn warworld, Narek's Edge, thousands of fresh troops stood ready. Massive machines of war rolled out of underground factories. High Commander Vezik stood above it all, his voice echoing through the steel halls. "We underestimated them. That was our mistake. We will not make it again." This time we will crush Earth's warriors. This time we will make the humans beg. The next target was already chosen. A human mining outpost called Dravos 3, rich in resources, lightly defended, and far from Earth's main fleet. A perfect place to strike. Except it wasn't. Dravos 3 had heard the stories, and they had called for the shadows. Back on Ares 5, Commander Harlan received the message just hours after the last Zarn ship fled. The colony was safe for now, but there was no rest. He stood in the mobile command unit, watching the stars again. Dravos 3 will fall in less than 2 days if we don't move. Zara looked up from her station. We're low on ammo, low on energy cells, but morale is high. Captain Rios stepped in, blood still on his armor. The boys are tired, sir, but they'll go. Harlan nodded. Then we go. Within minutes, the shadows were prepping for launch. Dravos 3 was more than a target. It was bait. Earth wanted to send a message. If the Zarn came again, they would be met with fire. The journey through deep space was silent. No one joked. No one slept. The human soldiers knew what was coming, but so did the Zarn. When the shadows arrived in orbit over Dravos 3, they didn't find an invasion force. They found a trap. Zarn warships, dozens of them, uncloaked one by one. Heavy cruisers, planetary siege ships, and a new kind of enemy. Bioships grown from living tissue, pulsing like giant hearts in the cold black. Zara shouted over comms, "It's an ambush!" Explosions rocked the first wave of human dropships. One shadow unit vanished instantly, swallowed by an energy net. The skies were chaos. Red and blue fire streaked across space, but Earth's warriors didn't hesitate. Commander Harlan growled, "Get us on the ground. We hold Dravos 3 or we die on it." Drop pods twisted through enemy fire, some bursting, some crashing. Those who made it deployed fast, turning the mining outpost into a fortress. The colonists there had already evacuated deep into tunnels. Only a small defense team remained, led by a sharp-eyed woman named Colonel Reyes. When she saw the shadows arrive, her grim face finally broke into a smile. "I was starting to think Earth forgot about us," she said. Harlan replied, "Earth remembers everyone." The Zarn didn't land this time. They didn't want another ground battle. They wanted to burn the outpost from orbit. Their siege ships turned, massive energy cannons glowing. But Earth was ready. Zara hacked the orbital station that once powered the mining colony. In seconds, its satellite guns turned toward the Zarn ships. Energy beams tore through the sky, cutting one cruiser clean in half. From the planet's surface, Rios launched a surprise counterattack. Remote drones hidden beneath mining drills took flight and struck the nearest bioship, cracking its shell open like an egg. Suddenly, it wasn't an ambush anymore. It was war. For every Zarn ship destroyed, 2 more pushed forward. The shadows fought from bunkers and ridgelines, calling airstrikes, hacking their way through firewalls and enemy drones. Blood painted the rocky surface of Dravos 3, both alien and human. But the Zarn were starting to panic. This wasn't how humans were supposed to fight. They weren't supposed to win ambushes. They weren't supposed to strike back in the middle of defeat. And then, something unexpected happened. A new Earth ship entered orbit, massive, black, silent. It didn't carry missiles. It carried something worse. The 73rd Hellborn Division, genetically enhanced, battle-bred, forgotten by peace, remembered now only by war. They didn't speak when they landed. They didn't wave flags. They came down in fire, armor glowing red, and began cutting through the enemy like shadows through mist. Even the shadows watched in awe. Commander Harlan stared as the battlefield shifted. "I didn't even know Earth still used Hellborn units." Rios replied, eyes wide. "They only wake them when the galaxy starts forgetting who we are." Within hours, the Zarn siege collapsed. Their flagship exploded. The bioships fled. The last few enemy troops vanished beneath the dirt. Dravos 3 was saved. But more importantly, Earth had roared again. In deep space, across hidden channels, the message was repeated. The humans have returned, and they are angry.